What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to Master Crafted. Today, we complete the series. We wrap it up. We're on layout 8. How does it feel, Phil? We're there.
The vindication is real. We went through 8 layouts, are about to give our final piece of great advice. At least that's what we tell ourselves when we're recording these videos to help you play 40K better. And from everything that we've been told by all of y'all, this has been incredibly helpful. So Lane and I have been cooking up what we're going to do next. And that'll be a surprise when we drop that next series. But as of right now, I'm looking forward to finishing out layout 8.
Yeah, it's a good time. This actually does pop up a little bit more often. You don't always expect it, but it's a little bit more flexible than 7. 7 only works for Tipping Point and Hammer and Anvil. 8 actually works for Crucible as well, so you can get a little bit more flexibility as a TO and actually have a lot more missions to choose from out of the approved pack.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like layout 8. We played it when we went up to Montana, and it was 3 rounds of layout 8, which was really interesting because we got to see that on repeat over a couple different missions. And I don't know, it's a unique board style because, man, I'll pull it up here so we can get right into it. But as you can see here, these middle pieces of terrain, these 2-inch walls on both sides make staging to the center ruin or the center objective so nice. It is so easy to get behind those walls, and those shooting lanes are not open. So it does make some very, very interesting mechanics and lists that are effective.
Yeah, I mean, we talked a lot about how aggressive, that middle staging ruin for layout 7 was. This one is even more aggressive because it's not restricted by having actual 4-inch tall walls. These are all 2-inch tall walls. If you are a demon player and you see this layout, you should be so excited. Your bloodthirster will be getting up into somebody's biscuits if you see this layout. Like, it is going to be very, very hard for them to screen you out without having multiple layers of protection.
Yeah. And for those that are just like, hey, what do you mean? Why is that good? Because monsters, vehicles, beasts, anything, they can go right through this wall, these 2-inch walls, as long as they don't end on a piece of terrain. So if they have the movement to go over, if their base size is small enough, they can just run through these things. Vehicles can go through these things. So like if I saw a repulsor executioner or something right behind this wall, that might be a little terrifying because then I can just pop out over the wall, just shoot the things it needs to shoot, and it still has a great way to cover firing lanes back and forth because it is a relatively tough asset. Mauler Fiends love to see this, right? The Mauler Fiend can sit right behind these 2-inch walls and threaten on both sides. And you have great ways to block line of sight because as we get into this piece of terrain, and it's on every deployment style, is this middle objective, our natural objective is incredibly exposed, right? If you touch that profile, you're getting shot at. The angles that you have actually are terrifying because that's pretty much can cover the middle, can cover your natural. So you need lone op. You need some way to sticky it, or else you need an incredibly tough unit, or you need to have locked down this side of the board, right? This whole side needs to be locked down if you want to put an asset out there that's not going to get shot.
Yeah. You can definitely kind of squeeze onto that little part of the objective behind the terrain profile itself. But if you're doing that, you're running the risk of somebody just staging on the other side of that ruin and running through that wall and just knocking you off of it anyway. Or even just, they can move up there with a shooting asset even and just peek the corner fairly easily. You really need to be able to afford yourself a little bit extra space to secure your natural on this terrain because, yes, it definitely can be very difficult. If you're playing on GW rules, I almost always am just like, here are 10 guardsmen behind the U-shaped wall an inch off. They are completely uninteractable, so you can't charge through there. And then I'm also going to have a whole unit of 10 on the objective behind it with probably like some Bulgrin sitting not far away to heroic as well if you're a melee army. Like, you just have to have so many layers to really make sure that they cannot take this from you on some of these, because it's so safe for them to jet up the side of the board with that terrain profile also being in your own way.
Yeah, absolutely. No, those are 2 really, really good points. The deployment areas in this are actually relatively safe because we do have a lot of line of sight blocking terrain that does cover our home even on this side, right? Like this is all still incredibly safe. For your opponent to get here to be able to shoot into this profile, into your deployment zone, is next to impossible turn one. There are very few armies that can actually do it, unless they're Eldari, really. So your deployment zone is incredibly safe in this, especially like even these little corner pockets. We can go here, we can go here, we can go here, and be very, very happy with our positioning, and be able to threaten like pushing out onto our natural.
Yes, yeah, it definitely is one of those layouts where I think early, if you have scouting units or some like lone op units that are just, or you just even outrange your opponent, you are really trying to just get up behind. We'll say if you're red, you're trying to get across the top of the board and just be sitting behind that wall with denial pieces. You're just holding them an inch off the wall. You're waiting. You say, okay, cool. You've stepped on with one piece now. I throw myself through there. I'm going to deny you because it's going to take you a second to actually get enough resources far enough up the board to move block your opponent from doing the same thing to you a lot of the time.
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely, absolutely. And those are some really good points, Lane. I really like this layout. I like the fact that it's playable, right? And it does benefit certain armies. And if I saw this in a terrain pack, I would not be upset at all.
No. Nope, it's totally fine. I think as far as like, going back to some of those deployment tips, generally you're always checking line of sight, make sure nothing can come out and touch you turn one. Generally, like if you have probably, we'll say 3 tanks is a little more average. You're probably starting one. If you're green below your home, it's going to be out of line of sight, ready to just come up and threaten across the midboard to that entire gap that looks up to their home objective. You're going to be starting off with one behind that middle ruin that can also flex if it needs to step wholly onto that middle terrain profile, or move up behind the 2-inch walls as just a ready to go staging piece, ready to kind of hop out and go shoot at stuff as long as your opponent can't just come tag you. And then last but not least, one that's going to be kind of starting in that top left corner. It has the flexibility if you want to just go ahead and get it out of the way and go all the way around, or you can kind of push it towards the middle and just kind of peek that gap. Either way, you're playing the same line of sight. It just really depends on kind of how you see your opponent deploying and kind of how the turn develops. But that's generally what you're doing. And other than that, I mean, the staging should just speak for itself as far as all of your infantry units go. There's tons of profiles to hide behind. You need to go up and get multiple things behind your natural. If your army, if your opponent has lots of melee, and you can afford to do it, maybe just be sending an extra screen out to really move block them, really deny them. I personally, I will try to go. I know they're going to have stuff staged behind their double blue 2-inch tall ruins. I will advance out with total trash if they're a melee army and be like, all right, cool. You might have 8 inches of movement and advance in charge, but I put a U around you and now you're stuck behind that little 2-inch wall. And if you don't have anything to shoot them off, you're just stuck there. So that works very well. I had the fortune of getting to play World Eaters, and I did that about 3 times in a row. So definitely very strong to put your trash in that ruin. And if they're trying to stage out of there, a good +3 to move in advance, or a very fast unit in general can just get out there and really, really be a problem. You're just trying to make sure you are holding much more of this board so you can get out into those shooting lanes more aggressively.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're trying to get our opponent, like if I have relatively decent shooting assets or even combat assets, I want to force my opponent to commit to the middle because there are multiple ways I can get after that from really safe locations, right? Like if I control the shooting assets, I can sit on the side of the board and threaten that objective, especially if I outrange my opponent as well, because there are some armies that don't have that long range shooting capabilities, which is okay. But you have to be able to play into it and around it. As Lane said, that's a great strategy. The other thing I would recommend, for those that are aware, we are recording this as of the MFM coming out, so we have new points changes. So you'll probably see some less Death Guard out there, but that doesn't mean that rapid ingress, one of our favorite stratagems, isn't going to be a thing. So if I'm talking about if I'm on the red defender side and I have assets here, right, I can't allow my opponent to rapid ingress a great unit here, especially with advance and charge or anything like that, to get around this wall and punish my natural. So what I am looking to do, even if it's with something potentially I consider valuable, if I value the control of my natural objective more, there are times where I may push an asset out here that I don't care about as much to make sure I still control my home, because I don't want my opponent to rapid ingress on my home, because that can, or on my natural, because that can be incredibly destabilizing for a game plan.
100%. And the other nice thing too is, as you look at all the cross shooting lanes, your ability to stay behind these ruins does extend. If you just are like, man, I don't really feel like I can go do anything, and you don't like have anything to go move block per se, you can still move up the board and go stand behind their 2-inch wall and just be like, hey, for you to get a line of sight on this, you have to come up the board so far to peek these corners, or just fight me on my side of the wall. And they're just going to have a unit hanging out in the open that you are threatening, because the staging is just so good. There's just layer after layer. You can keep moving up and forcing your opponent to deal with it, or it will become a problem for them.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Lane. Let's move on to the next one.
Yeah. Yeah, easy enough. Crucible wrapped up.
Next one is Tipping Point.
Well, this is very similar without quite as ease of, denying your opponent their natural. You're not going to have that quite as easily. You might still have enough scout. You can go and do that. If you can, that's great. You really, really do want to do that. But on this one, you're probably going to spend a little bit more emphasis, securing your own natural. You start off a little bit closer to it with more units. You can just really push up the board with a lot of things. And it starts to become more of a more castle-y overall game, and less, I'm going to deny you twice, maybe just once.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And the reason we can control our natural a little bit better is the places that we can start in, not necessarily, obviously nothing changed with the layout. We do have a little bit more access to our home and our natural. So putting assets here, especially on the line, is incredibly safe. Like, you could put assets all the way up on the line, whether it's your Rogel Dorn or your transport or your Rhino, or even just a unit that has a good, decent movement. It allows you to get onto your home objective incredibly quickly, or your natural objective incredibly quickly, and kind of lock down that space. You can start inside this terrain, right off the wall. Obviously, you cannot be wholly inside that unless you have a unit that has infiltrate, but it does mean that you can start positionally on the board really strongly. The only place that's not necessarily safe to deploy, I would say, is this area right here. Right? I don't necessarily want to be on the other side of this wall or this terrain block, because my opponent, as we already talked about, could put an asset right here and get to this position where they can threaten, back behind our 2-inch wall or anything like that. So we have to be very careful on that side of the deployment. Everything else is relatively safe.
Yeah, I agree. I think, even below that, on the green side, you do run a little bit of a risk. You need to be very aware of how quick their stuff moves. If they can hop that center ruin, they could potentially get a line, but they really need to have something that is worth yeeting into the midboard turn one, that they don't mind losing, which is very rare. Anything that can actually deal with a lot of your units, it's going to be tough for them to just yeet that out there, and feel like that trade is worth it, as long as you don't have 5 really nice juicy 3-wound Marines and they have a heavy blight launcher. That's like, yeah, I'll make that trade. But thankfully those are going up, so that helps it feel a little better. One thing we didn't talk about really too much on the first one, but I really want to talk on this one, is the infiltrators. Infiltrating, if you have a 5-man of infiltrators or scouts, you can just basically start right in there behind the U, make that already uninteractable as far as any charge moves, things like that, make them go all the way around. It's pretty handy. You can also start behind those doubled up 4x6s to go score in the middle. It's generally not too far away. That pocket that Phil was showing in the middle ruin, you can move up from there fairly quickly with some units. A scouting unit generally can even do it from there. But yeah, I think that's generally more of a lone op place, if you can, for the mid board versus your natural.
Yeah. Wouldn't it be nice to have a unit that's got like infiltrate and a reactive move and like a 3-up save and a 5-up feel no pain? Yeah, I wish everyone had a unit like that.
Yeah, that would be nice, but we can't all be so lucky. So we'll just make do. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Other than that, pretty standard. Deployment stays the same. You're still just trying to hopscotch up the board, taking advantage of all of those ruins as best you can. Get as close to them as you can without being within an inch, and just really force your opponent to have to peek around corners every chance you get, try to never just be out in the open, and really just fight around those angles as much as you can.
Yeah. So I can't guarantee that knights will never be a problem, but with the changes, we'll probably see knights less. But I will give everyone a tactic out there that they can use to protect themselves, especially on layouts like this, where your opponent, if they are a knights player, can very easily touch these walls to get line of sight over them. And Lane and I talked about this at our last tournament up in Montana. You can put a unit within 1 inch of the other side of the wall. So your opponent cannot get within an inch of it to see through it, because they cannot end with an engagement range, which is an inch. And you can use that to block your opponent on layouts like this, because this is definitely a layout where your opponent can come up, they can touch either side of it, and then be able to shoot through into spaces, causing you to be very, very defensive about where you can actually place a unit.
Yeah, that definitely is a game changer. Sure, they can charge in to your chaff unit and deal with them that way, but just being on that wall, preventing them from towing in, they can't really touch the bottom edge, like that's near the board edge, because that oval base just does not allow that to happen as long as you have one tucked at the corner. They just really aren't built that way. So you can really just deny at least the shooting risk turn one. I realized that I was like halfway through deployment against Colin up in Montana, and I was like, oh shit, like who cares if you charge me with a carnivore turn one and get rid of ratlings? I just deployed so safely because I was like, well, if you go first and you do use your +3 to move and you come touch that ruin, my tanks are just gonna get shot to crap and stuff. So I deployed very passively, very safely, but in that matchup, doing what Phil was talking about, be on the wall, make that option not available. Sure, you might give up an asset to something else, but you take care of a much bigger problem, and that is giving up too much of the board because you respect night damage too much. You need to be able to push all of your shit up into your natural as fast as possible.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Okay. I think that's great for tipping point. Let's move on to the last one.
Last but not least, we got hammer and anvil. Phil, what are we looking at with this one?
Very similar to tipping point. Very similar in terms of deployment and thoughts on this. But the main difference is we now have this middle objective, our home objective, that is in the central side of the board. There are benefits to this. It means that you can display units out and screen out from the center, right? But it usually means that I have to put 2 units out because I have to protect both sides of the objective from rapid ingress, from deep strikes, from all of those things. So there is some negative sides to this of, okay, now this is in the middle. It is definitely more threatening because I have to protect a lot more space than I would if this was in a corner, right? Obviously, if our objective is here or even here, right, it's a lot easier because I can just bubble out on one side and I don't even have to think about really protecting this side because the unit I have there is naturally doing that anyways. Here, I'm either using multiple units to do it or one massive unit to do it, or I'm trying to find sticky, and then that way I can push out differently. It causes a headache for sure, that home objective.
Yeah, it definitely is a little bit more of a commitment to holding your home. Luckily, there's going to be things like purge. If you're just like, well, screw it, I'm just going to go throw myself onto one of the objectives on one side of the board and really, really secure it. Eventually, I can leave my home, and it doesn't matter because we're not on linchpin or scorched. So that is nice. Remain flexible if you can do that, but in general, it's still the easiest one to hold because the problem is all the center ones are insanely easy to deny. They are so easy to deny because you both will just stage right next to it and then just walk on. It's like the easier one to hold is the one that's actually on the other side of those 12x6 ruins that are next to the board edge now. It's on the other side. So instead of being on the left side, it's on the right as you come out of your deployment zone. So that's your natural now, just because it is a little bit easier to hold. But your opponent still has such an easy time, and you have such an easy time going to deny. I think the big part of this game is really trying to understand where you can knock out their resources. And if you can ever get to the point where you have held it with something, maybe sticking it or whatever, but then send that as a wave and provide yourself a buffer as you run through their terrain piece to then put something of your own on and just buy yourself a couple of turns, hopefully, of scoring by just zoning them out eventually. I think that is one of the best strategies if you can for securing your own until that opportunity arrives. So you're just playing denial. You're going to say, okay, cool. I held my home. Guess what? You're holding your home. And then you're just going to do that for 2 to 3 rounds until you find out who has less trash to keep flipping these things. And then you're going to just
Yeah.
kind of shove on past that and be like, all right, cool. Well, I held mine and I'll just keep denying the rest. And I think that's really how this one does play. In missions like Purge, it doesn't matter quite as much. So don't put anything out there. Literally don't. Unless you, I shouldn't say that. That's too bold. If you are a trash army and your opponent is super elite, put shit on those objectives and do it early. Get them to put their army out there, force them out, and hopefully make their response enough that you can kill enough of their army that you will eventually get hold more while they're getting kill more. Because if you don't interact with them, eventually they'll just jail you and probably still get killed more.
No, absolutely. This mission, I would expect to see very low primary scores, because my expectation would be you and your opponent are denying each other for the first 3 to 4 turns. If it's anything but purge the foe, like no one's scoring middle primary. I'm not going to let my opponent do that. Like I can't let you score primary because I can't let you flip it the other way around. Going into armies like GSC, like Guard, even Eldar, even Drakari or Votan or any of these like high MSU builds where they have multiple assets to trade, I can't afford to trade with you like that because you will deny me and I have to find ways to deny you. And that's the only way that I can be effective. I can't go through this game and not interact, especially on this mission.
Yeah. Yep. It's just too dang tough to literally hold stuff until you have gotten rid of enough resources that they literally just cannot deny you anymore on any of the missions where holding those no man's land objectives actually really really matter. Even playing if you play Scorched on this, you're gonna be like, I got 5, you got 5, I got 5. Like it's so easy to deny. You're not getting 10s on this most of the time.
Yeah. Yeah, if you are, then thank your lucky stars because you already have an advantage in the game. Because as long as you watch this video and you're learning these lessons, this is the easiest where you can deny your opponent, and you should be doing that on a constant basis.
Yeah, and really, like I guess, like for me, even in certain scenarios, like evaluate how many things you need to deal with. Like maybe I just like need to give up a tank, and I'll go kill 3 to 4 things on a couple of objectives, and you'll trade back. But I killed like 4 of your pieces, and you'll kill my tank, and you're just playing that trade game we talked about, right? As long as we're baiting out the things and able to deal with them next, like on that board, it is literally all about denial and getting rid of your opponent's pieces. It matters so much more, I feel like, on that specific layout and mission and like mission dependent than a lot of these others because like literally none of it is safe. So maximizing trades, that's just the name of the game on that one, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you want to learn about maximizing your trades, strongly recommend watching the video that comes out on Friday and where we bring on Cody Giroux. He's a fantastic player, and he talks all about his trade style and how he learns how to do those things. And it would be incredibly helpful, especially in combination with a layout like this.
Yeah. Yeah. Looking forward to that one dropping. It's going to be a good one. Actually, wait. I hope y'all enjoyed that one. That came out last Friday.
Oh, it did. That's right.
Technically, it's weird. We're actually getting ahead of ourselves now, and we're trying to record content for weeks to come. We're doing the thing, guys. Be proud of us. We're going to keep trying to keep getting more and more professional at this. Less amateur might be more accurate, but we're doing that, and we hope y'all enjoy it because it's been a lot of fun for us, and we hope to keep interacting with y'all and putting out great content that hopefully is helpful. Phil, any final thoughts as we wrap up the layout series?
Yeah, so when you're watching this, Lane and I will have come back from another tournament that we're super excited for. So hopefully your tournaments and GTs and all those things are going great because Lane and I are right in the thick of competition season and we're really enjoying ourselves.
Yes, we are. Yeah, we'll begin back from Utah. It's going to be a great time. Can't wait to see all y'all Utah players and meet some new people. But in the meantime, do not forget to like and subscribe, and don't forget to leave a comment. It really helps with the algorithm. This channel has been growing immensely, and it's all thanks to y'all, and we really appreciate it. But last but not least, the most important part, is do not forget that victory isn't given. It's forged. And it's forged right here on Mastercrafted. And we'll see y'all next time.